entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from New Hampshire, Mr. Pappas, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from Nevada, Ms. Titus, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Gentlelady from Nevada is recognized.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Subramanian, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Sherrill, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Mannion, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make and order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make and order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Thank you for yielding, Mr. Speaker. I request that we allow a vote to let the 10, 20, 30 formula be applied to the low-income areas of this affected by this bill.
Was that UC? Seeking unanimous consent?
Yes, sir.
Does the gentlelady from North Carolina yield for that purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I do not yield.
To the gentleman from South Carolina, the gentlelady from North Carolina will not yield for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Once again, the gentlelady has been clear. She is not entertaining the unanimous consent request. She will not yield to that point, and therefore it cannot be entertained at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I thank.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Gentlelady from North Carolina is not yielding for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is not yielding for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Del Bene, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Washington, Ms. Jayapal, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make and order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rules to make and order the spirit of Jesus as it's spoken in Matthew. He was sick and I healed him. He was hungry and I fed him. Medicare and health care and SNAP payments, nutrition payments should not be taken away from fellow passengers on this earth.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is not yielding for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from
Further, if the gentleman would suspend.
Yep.
Further, the chair would advise members that although a unanimous consent request to consider a measure is covered by the Speaker's guidelines for recognition, embellishments constitute debate, and as such can become an imposition on the time of the member who is yielded for that purpose.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Ross, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. Thank you.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and to SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Thompson, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schneider, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Casar, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Stanton, for the purposes of a unanimous consent request.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make in order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid or SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the distinguished gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to amend the rule to make and order the amendment at the desk that protects against any cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
The gentlelady from North Carolina has not yielded for that purpose, and therefore, the unanimous consent request cannot be entertained. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, over 100 Democratic members just asked to allow an amendment to protect Medicaid and SNAP, just to give us a vote. That's all we ask. And I will say we are here standing up for the American people no matter where they live. And this is what it looks like to fight for the American people, to make sure that this administration and this Republican Congress doesn't rip away their health care and their food benefits. That is disgusting. In the gentlewoman from North Carolina's district alone, 142,000 of her constituents would lose some or all of their SNAP benefits. And 5 rural hospitals are at risk of closure. We're here to help people, not to screw them over. I reserve my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentlelady from North Carolina. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wow, that gambit was riveting. I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves her time. He's got 7. We'll advise both sides of the time remaining.
Yes,
the gentleman from Massachusetts has 7 minutes remaining. Gentlelady from North Carolina has 7 3/4 minutes remaining in the debate.
The gentlelady has how many minutes?
7 3/4 for the majority, 7 for the minority.
We'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I give 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Fine.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I sat here and listened to that panoply of speeches or motions over the last few seconds, I was reminded of the fact that when we say there should be no cuts to Medicaid, we are saying there should be no cuts to illegal immigrants that are getting Medicaid. Now, we live in a world where we spend more money than we bring in, and it is not fair to actual Americans to be forced to take on additional debt to give benefits to people who are not in this country legally. And I would note that the Democrats have not proposed a solution that would allow us to continue to give benefits to people who shouldn't be here anyway and pay for them without our children going into future debt. We must keep that in mind. We are here to fight for Americans, and that is what this bill does. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the gentleman's ever read the Medicaid statute, but undocumented immigrants are not entitled to receive Medicaid benefits, and they don't. And our solution to make sure that our children are not saddled with debt is to not give billionaires and millionaires and corporations big tax cuts. Jeff Bezos doesn't need a tax cut. And why don't you come down here and explain to people why it's so important that you protect his tax cuts? We tried to go after the billionaire tax cuts in the Rules Committee last night, and every single Republican voted no. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to invest in people who need help. We're going to make sure people have health care. We're going to make sure people have food assistance. We're not going to screw them over. Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. DeSagne.
Is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for yielding. This bill would cause household resources for the poorest Americans to decrease, while the obscenely rich will get richer. I offered 2 amendments that rules, one to prevent people with disabilities from being kicked off Medicaid, and one to help low-income students afford an education that they earned. Unfortunately, Republicans refused to consider them as they yet again worked through the dead of night to rip off hardworking Americans and give tax breaks to the richest Americans who don't need them. And even Fox News reports that it is projected to increase the federal deficit by $4 trillion over the next decade. This bill is nothing more than a vanity project for the president, and it betrays the American people. I strongly oppose this reckless legislation and urge my colleagues to do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Babin.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in very strong support of H.R. 1, President Trump's one big, beautiful bill. Here we are, despite months of my Democrat colleagues' best efforts to delay, to fearmonger, and mislead the public about this bill, and we're ready to deliver for the American people. But here's the thing about fear-mongering. You can only say the sky is falling so many times before folks start waking up and looking and seeing for themselves exactly what's going on. The one big, beautiful bill secures our border. It prevents the single largest tax increase in American history. It refocuses safety net programs for those who truly need them, not the ones shamming. And then it reinvigorates our armed forces, where we saw a diminution for 4 long years under the Biden administration. Mr. Speaker, it is high time that we deliver this to the president's desk for his signature. This is promises made and promises kept. And I'm very proud to support this bill and yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
The big ugly bill is going to throw 16 million people off of health care and give people like Jeff Bezos, millionaires and billionaires, a tax cut. If that's what you're about, I hate to tell you, that's not what the American people voted for. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Riley.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where I come from, we make things. Generations woke up before the crack of dawn, went off to the factory, punched a clock, worked their hands to the bone, came home and counted nickels to make sure they could keep a roof over the kids' heads, keep food on the kids' tables. We've kept our heads down, we've kept our sleeves rolled up, we've kept our shoulder to the wheel, and all we've asked for is a fair shot and for this place to stop screwing us over. But you can't help yourselves. You got us into terrible trade deals that made Wall Street rich and shipped all of our jobs overseas. You bail out the banks while neglecting rural America. You rigged the economy so the corporate PACs that are funding your campaigns make huge profits, jacking up costs on folks who can't afford it. And now this bill will kill good blue-collar manufacturing jobs that we need to rebuild the economy in this country. It closes rural hospitals, it defunds healthcare, all to give trillions of dollars in tax cuts to your cronies. Don't tell me you give a shit about the middle class when all you're doing is shitting on the middle class.
Chair would remind both sides of 2 things. Please direct your remarks to the chair. That is a House rule, and to avoid vulgar speak. We do have families in the gentleman will not be recognized. Gentlelady from North Carolina. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for reminding us of the language we should be using in this chamber, and I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts, with 4 1/2 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that when the president comes here next, you'll admonish him for the language he uses. But I'd now like to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Delaware, Ms. McBride.
She's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this big, ugly bill. And let's be clear, this bill is Trump care. And Trump care means 17 million more Americans uninsured and all the rest of us paying higher costs and driving further to get care. Over the last several months, I've met with hundreds of Delawareans, parents, patients, providers, hospital leaders, teachers, nurses, people across the state of Delaware, everyone asking us, pleading with us to kill this bill. Are my Republican colleagues meeting with their constituents? Are they ignoring them? Do they even care? Every yes vote shows very clearly that they don't. This bill is trickle-down cruelty, and people will die because of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the president has said numerous times, there'll be no cuts to Medicaid. The One Big Beautiful Bill protects and strengthens Medicaid for those who rely on it. Pregnant women, children, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income families, while eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. The One Big Beautiful Bill removes illegal aliens, enforces work requirements, and protects Medicaid for the truly vulnerable. And for our colleagues on the other side who say illegal aliens are not receiving this, we understand that 1.4 million people do not meet citizenship and immigration status requirements for Medicaid enrollment, but would be covered under current law and programs funded by the states. And we know that because we have a CBO score. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I reserve.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Khanna.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, I never want to hear the Republicans lecture about fiscal responsibility again. The last president to actually balance this budget was Bill Clinton. And today, Bob Rubin and Larry Summers wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that every American should read. Their budget will take the deficit up to 8% of GDP. It is historically unprecedented in the history of our country during peacetime. We've never had a more reckless deficit exploding bill than what they're posing. The Democrats have a proposal to bring the deficits back down under 4%. Bob Rubin and Larry Summers were the last ones who've done it. Hakeem Jeffries is leading with a sensible proposal to lower deficits. If you care about debt in this country, if you care about our grandkids being burdened with debt, if you care about a bond market devastation, then you need to recognize that this bill hurts America and you need to support the Democratic plan for deficit reduction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady from North Carolina with 4 3/4 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for a half minute.
With the One Big Beautiful Bill, President Trump is once again keeping his promises to the American people. He promised he would stop the largest tax increase in American history. He promised he would make the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. He promised he would deliver the largest tax cut for hardworking taxpayers in American history. And he promised to eliminate tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits. President Trump is keeping his word. He is delivering much needed relief for the American people. And this will produce an investment surge, driving real median incomes up by $10,000 relative to the scenario in which the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is allowed to expire. And to my friend from California, if he cares about fiscal responsibility, stopping a $4.5 trillion tax increase stops a recession. You cannot balance the budget without growth.
Expired.
I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, we have like a million more speakers over here, but we're out of time. So I'm prepared to close. So I don't know how many more speakers the gentlelady has.
Mr. Speaker, we're prepared to close also.
Looks like both sides are prepared to close. Gentleman from Massachusetts, you have 2 1/2 minutes remaining.
I don't want to close, but I'm prepared to close. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is a moral failure. It rips health care away from millions. It pushes more families into hunger. It leaves seniors stranded. Also, billionaires can keep more of what they'll never spend. Republicans say, lose your job? Too bad. Hospitals shut down? Good luck. Can't afford groceries or insulin? Figure it out. But if you're a big oil, a CEO, or a trust fund baby, don't worry, we've got you covered. This bill is about who matters and who doesn't. And guess what? Working people didn't make the cut. But I want my Republican colleagues to know they don't have to do this. They don't have to sell out their own communities. They don't have to vote for a bill that goes against fundamental things they claim to believe in. Crazy as it sounds, they don't have to hurt people to keep Trump happy. Find a spine. Find a conscience, for God's sake, because the American people are watching. They know the difference between real leadership and bootlicking. A vote for this bill is a vote for cruelty. It's a vote for fiscal irresponsibility and a vote to screw over your constituents to give more to the ultra-wealthy. This bill is a middle finger to working people. Now, we can still stop this. We can still do the right thing. Vote no. Go back to the table. Work with us on tax relief for people who are not making millions and billions of dollars. Don't let this be your legacy. That so many of you are blindly going along with this just to please the guy in the White House is shameful. You have a responsibility to care for the people in your districts. And you're voting for a bill that's going to throw millions off of health care and rip food off kitchen tables all across the country. It's shameful. It is shameful. I'm disgusted that we are here debating this trash. And with that, I urge a no vote on the rule and a no vote on the bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Once again, we remind both sides, direct your comments to the chair. Gentlelady from North Carolina, with 4 3/4 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people who have supported the Democrat Party policies for years cannot come to this floor and question the morality of Republicans. President Trump has his pen in hand and is waiting for the House to complete its work. We've championed this legislation for months, have guided it through the appropriate processes, and we're on the 1 yard line. America deserves to move even further into the golden age. H.R. 1 unlocks the opportunity to do that. It's time to get this done. Let's be crystal clear about the content of this historic bill. We're restoring our borders, once left defenseless and without redress. We're protecting our great nation by investing in our military and military families. We're preserving tax cuts that made the United States economy the envy of the world just 8 years ago. And we're reviving our nation's fiscal outlook by finally cutting wasteful spending and unleashing our economy from harmful restraint. Restore, protect, preserve, revive. And the failure to act would yield only the opposite. Our Democrat colleagues would tear down the border walls and return us to open border policies. They would have us oversee a continued decline in our military readiness, despite unprecedented theaters of global conflict. They would destroy our economy in their unending appetite for continued tax increases to feed their spending binges. The choice is clear. We must deliver. We must deliver a renewed, restored, revived nation and grant voters the America they stood for just 8 months ago. In a moment, I will offer an amendment to the rule which would correct a technical error in the rule. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the previous question, yes on the amendment, and yes on the rule. Mr. Speaker, I offer an amendment to the resolution.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to House Resolution 566, offered by Ms. Fox of North Carolina. At the end of the resolution, add the following. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the motion to its adoption without intervening motion.
Gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the amendment and on the resolution.
The question is on ordering the previous question on the amendment on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I ask for the yeas and nays and a hearing aid for you.
The yeas. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question will be followed by 5-minute votes on adoption of the amendment offered by the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, if ordered, and adoption of the resolution, if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.